Have you ever found yourself in this situation? A man clearly says, "I don't want anything serious." Yet a few days later, your phone buzzes, and his name appears. Your heart races, even though your mind is screaming, "Don't fall for it again. It will be just like before." The story often begins sweetly. At first, he is attentive, gentle, making you believe that something special is starting to grow. But then, without warning, he disappears. No text, no call, no explanation. He just leaves you with long, sleepless nights and a haunting question. What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Just when you gather the courage to tell yourself it's time to let go, he comes back, as if he never left. A familiar message, a soft hello, a glance filled with unspoken meaning, and all the strength you had crumbles, like fine sand slipping through your fingers. You want to believe this time will be different, that he will stay, that there will be no more painful silences, but fear still wraps around you, like walking barefoot on a road covered in shattered glass. Every step stings, but you cannot stop moving. This is the haunting paradox. One half of your heart wants to hope. The other half quietly warns you to be careful. If you see yourself in these words, know that you are not alone. Many women have stood exactly where you are. They are smart, strong, beautiful, and yet still trapped in the whirlwind of a man who doesn't want commitment but also can't seem to let go. And the question echoes in your mind. If he truly doesn't want anything serious, why doesn't he walk away for good? Why does he keep coming back, keep pulling me in? The answer isn't about you. It has nothing to do with whether you're good enough, attractive enough, or lovable enough. The truth lies somewhere else deep inside it, in the quietest corners of a man's soul, a place even he rarely understands. A man can easily say, "I don't want anything serious," but his body tells a different story. Notice how his eyes linger a little longer when they look at you, how his hand holds yours a little tighter in silence, how the space between you suddenly feels magnetic. There is something in the energy between you that he cannot deny. He wants freedom, but he still returns. He wants to prove he is strong and independent, yet something unconscious keeps pulling him back to where you are. This very paradox is what traps you in an endless game. How many times have you asked yourself, if he isn't genuine, why does he show up? If it's just a game, why do I sometimes see something real in his eyes? Those warm moments, those small gestures that make your heart flutter, are they illusions? Or are they proof of a deeper truth beyond the surface? This is the moment you realize that words only reveal part of the story. Beneath the surface, in the unconscious, there is a battle he cannot put into words. One part wants to avoid commitment. The other craves connection and closeness. You are the one caught in that storm, pushed away, then pulled back, again and again. I want you to picture this, as if he stands between two doors. One leads to freedom, no ties, no responsibilities. The other leads to connection, warmth, and safety. He wants to step into both, but he cannot choose. So he keeps pacing between them, while you are the one stuck in the loop. The truth is, most men are not even fully aware of this conflict. Their emotions come like waves, instinctive and confusing. They feel fear, then longing. They pull away, then come closer. And in the middle of it all, your heart is torn by a conflict you did not create. The hardest part is the blur between hope and heartbreak. You see the light in his eyes. You hear the warmth in his voice. And you believe it can't all be a lie. But then, when he disappears, the darkness returns. And you blame yourself. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe I was just dreaming. But the truth is no. The paradox you are facing says nothing about your worth. It speaks of a battle inside him. A battle he doesn't even know how to name. There is an image in psychology I want you to hold on to. Light and shadow exist within every person. When a man says, "I don't want anything serious," but still comes to you, that is not a declaration of your value. It is a sign of the divide within him. One part wants to run, another part is drawn in. And you are the mirror reflecting that internal split. This paradox is a doorway to a deeper truth. But to walk through it, you need one essential thing, not to let pain distract you. You may be asking, so what should I do? Wait? Try to change him? Number. The answer is not in exhausting waiting or trying to fix someone else. It lies in understanding what is truly happening inside him. so you no longer lose yourself in this cycle. Let this be the starting point. Know that this paradox is not proof that you are lacking. It is proof that he is struggling with himself. And in that struggle lies potential for transformation, both for him and for you. But before we uncover how to turn this paradox into power, you must understand this. His inner conflict is not random. It is deeply rooted in the unconscious male psyche, shaped by biology, evolution, and ancient fears. Only when you understand that root can you step out of this painful loop and reclaim the power over your heart. This is the path we will walk together. A journey into the truth behind the contradictory words, "I don't want anything serious, but I still want to see you." This is only the beginning. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the unconscious spiral, where the real reason for this paradox begins to emerge. Imagine the moment he looks you straight in the eyes and says, "I don't want anything serious." His voice is firm, his face calm, as if he has thought it through. You hear those words, and your heart sinks. But just a few days later, the same man sends a message, as if nothing ever happened. "Are you free? I want to see you." On the surface, this behavior seems contradictory, even dishonest. But the truth underneath is far more complex. In his mind, two voices are constantly at war. One urges him to protect his freedom, warning him that commitment is a trap that will lock him away forever. The other whispers that he cannot let go, that an invisible thread keeps pulling him back to you. This is not a game, nor is it a deliberate attempt to hurt you. It is an unconscious spiral, an inner battle that even he does not fully understand. On the conscious level, he truly believes he doesn't want commitment. This is the mask of logic, the voice of the ego trying to protect his independence. When he says he's not ready, he feels like he's being honest with himself. But deeper, beneath awareness, another current is flowing. His body responds in ways he cannot control. When he's near you, bonding hormones rush in. His heart softens. His eyes grow gentle. That is what pulls him back, even as his words deny it. You can feel this conflict clearly. One day he disappears without a trace. Another day, he shows up with a look that makes you tremble. One moment he is distant, the next he is tender. You don't know what is real anymore, yet your heart still holds on. Jung once said that within every man lies a hidden feminine image, the anima. Most of the time, this part stays hidden, quietly resting in the shadows. But when a man meets a woman who awakens his deeper emotions, the anima stirs. In that moment, you become the mirror, reflecting his most vulnerable self. This is both captivating and terrifying. Captivating because he feels more whole when he's with you. Terrifying because to face that longing, he must confront his own vulnerability. He must face the fear of losing himself. Men often carry the ancient memory of their ancestors, a memory that taught them survival depended on strength and independence. Deep love can awaken that primal fear, the fear of being consumed by closeness, the fear of losing their identity. But here lies the paradox. Within that same instinct to run, there is also a deep longing. Men don't only crave freedom, they also crave connection, a safe place to come home to, someone with whom they can take off the armor. These two forces do not cancel each other out. They coexist, pushing him away from you and pulling him back at the same time. And you are the one standing in the middle of that battle. When he runs, you feel abandoned. When he returns, you see a glimpse of hope. And so you enter the spiral to hope, disappointment, waiting, hurt. The loop repeats itself. Like a strange dance neither of you knows how to stop. You begin to doubt yourself. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I'm just a temporary choice. But the truth is different. You are not the reason he runs. You are also not the reason he comes back. You are the mirror where his inner war becomes most visible. Notice the conflicting signals. He says he doesn't want commitment, but he remembers the smallest details of your stories. He tries to keep distance, but his hand unconsciously reaches for yours. He says he's not ready, but when you stay silent too long, he grows anxious and finds a way to draw you close again. These signals are not lies. They are whispers from the unconscious parts of himself he hasn't yet dared to acknowledge. In truth, this spiral holds a special potential. The conflict isn't just a sign of chaos. It is the beginning of transformation. Jung once wrote that people only truly change when they are pulled between two opposing forces. That tension is what sparks growth. And right now, that man is being stretched between his longing for freedom and his need for connection. You may feel like a victim, swept up in the storm. But if you learn how to stand steady, not be pulled under, you become the mirror that helps him recognize his hidden truth. In that moment, you don't just escape the spiral, you unlock the power of transformation. For yourself, and perhaps even for him. I want you to remember this clearly. Your worth does not depend on whether he stays or leaves. Your value does not lie in his inner struggle. When he says, "I don't want anything serious," but still seeks you out, that is not a statement about you. It is evidence of the division within him, of a battle he has not yet learned to name. And within that battle, a door quietly opens. A door to another journey, one where you get to choose. To either continue being pulled into the spiral, or to turn it into an opportunity to discover your true strength. But before you can find your way out, you need to face one important truth. Most women who fall into the spiral react instinctively, and those very reactions, without realizing it, make everything worse. This is the trap that few people see. The door has opened. You have seen the paradox within him, and how it pulls you in. But what matters now is how you respond. Because often, it is the most natural, instinctive reactions that keep you trapped the longest. And that is another story, one you may already know all too well. Do you remember the last time he said, "I don't want anything serious"? His words cut like a knife, cold and direct. You forced a smile, pretending to be fine. But inside, everything was tangled. That night, you tossed and turned, curling up under the blanket, reaching for your phone. You thought about sending him a long message, trying to explain that you weren't asking for too much, that you just wanted to know where you stood. But then, you deleted it. The next day, anger rose inside you. You thought, if he doesn't want this, then fine, I'll go silent. Let him realize my worth. So you disappeared, waiting for him to feel lost without you. But instead of panic, he stayed silent even longer than you expected. The more you waited, the more anxious you became. And in the end, you were the one who texted first. The spiral repeated itself. Or maybe, there was a time when you couldn't hold it in anymore and blurted out, "What do you really want from me?" Your voice trembled, caught between anger and fear. He looked at you, confused, then sighed, "I told you already. I'm not ready." And just like that, you felt like you had made everything worse. These are all too familiar reactions: anxiety, anger, desperate silence, all of them rooted in one deep fear, the fear of losing him. And ironically, those very reactions are often what push him further away. It's easy to fall into this trap. When you hear rejection, your mind begins building 1,000 theories. He doesn't truly love me. I'm just an option. He's waiting for someone better. The more you think, the deeper you fall into the endless guessing game. And in that space, you start acting from fear, not from clarity. Fear makes you send text after text, seeking reassurance. Fear makes you try to prove your worth. Fear makes you stay silent on the outside, while aching on the inside, like someone standing at a locked door, knocking endlessly with no answer. He senses it. Even if you try to hide it, your energy, whether anxious, pleading, or angry, reaches him like an undercurrent. And for a man already afraid of losing his freedom, that energy feels like pressure. So he pulls away. You hurt more, then try harder to hold on. And the cycle continues. If you look closely, you'll see how familiar this spiral island. It didn't start with him. It began deep inside you. Maybe from an old memory, a wound left unhealed. Maybe from the first time you loved and were abandoned. Maybe from a comment in childhood that made you believe you had to work twice as hard to be loved. When he says, "I'm not ready," those old memories come rushing back. You don't just hear a sentence from the present. You hear echoes from the past. You're not enough. You will be left. You're just a backup. And your reaction becomes intense, not only because of him, but because of all the shadows still untouched within you. That's the real trap. You think you're reacting to him, but in truth, you're reacting to the darkness within yourself. Jung once said that what we don't make conscious will control us. And in this situation, it controls both of you. He is driven by a fear of commitment. You are driven by a fear of abandonment. And when those fears meet, instead of calming each other, they magnify. He steps back. You chase. You chase, he steps further away. a dance with no end. But I want you to imagine a different moment. One day when he says, "I'm not ready," instead of reacting, you simply smile. You don't argue. You don't try to convince him. You don't go silent out of resentment. You just take a breath and reply calmly, "I understand. And I also know clearly what I want." What happens then? You are no longer pulled into the spiral of reaction. You step out of it. You stand in the center of yourself. You don't deny the pain, but you don't let it drive your choices either. And with that shift in energy, he is suddenly faced with a new reality. He no longer holds all the power in this dynamic. This is not manipulation. This is truth. The truth that you have a choice, that you have a voice, that you are not bound by old reactions. The trap of wrong reactions always makes you believe you have to do something to keep him. You must prove, persuade, endure, or disappear. But the truth is different. You don't need to do anything to keep someone who isn't ready. What you need is to remain rooted in yourself. Think of a candle in a dark room. If it flickers too much, it goes out. But if it stands steady, its light naturally spreads without shouting. People are the same. When you stand firm, you don't need to prove anything. Your light speaks for itself. I know this isn't easy. Because to step out of the trap, you must learn to see the darkness within yourself, to understand that fear is not the enemy. Fear is a signal. The fear of abandonment doesn't mean you are unworthy. It only means there is a part of you longing to be healed. And only when you face it directly can you step out of the spiral of reaction. There's a truth many women have discovered. When they stop chasing, stop letting fear drive their actions, the man begins to feel differently. He senses a space where he can breathe, where he can slowly touch the vulnerable part within himself. And it is in that moment that change begins to happen. So if you recognize yourself in these old reactions, don't blame yourself. You are human, carrying old wounds. But what matters most is that from this moment on, you can choose differently. You can step out of the trap and stop spinning in the exhausting dance. This is the threshold to a new path, the path of presence. Not anxious presence, not dependent presence, but inner presence. Calm and strong. And when you stand in that presence, everything begins to shift. The door is opening wider. You've seen the spiral within him. And now, you've seen the trap within yourself. The next step is not to run faster, but to pause, breathe, and learn to stand firm. That is where true magnetism begins. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next part. The power of feminine presence, a force that can transform the entire dance between you and him, without persuasion or mind games. There's something strange about it. The more you try to explain, the more you try to convince him, the more he seems to pull away. But then there are those moments that feel entirely different. Moments when you do nothing at all. You just sit there, quietly, letting your eyes speak instead of your voice. And in those moments, you can sense that his guard is down. His eyes soften, his voice grows deeper, and for a brief second, you feel like you're seeing a different man, the real one, without the mask. Have you ever felt that? Just a fleeting moment, yet enough to make you believe something deeper is happening. Like catching a glimpse of light in the dark brief, but enough to remind you that light still exists. In those moments, you touch the power of feminine presence. Long ago, in ancient cultures, it was believed that some women held a special kind of power. They didn't need to shout. They didn't need to fight or prove anything. Their very presence was enough to make others feel seen, accepted, and illuminated. These women did not chase. They did not run away. They stood firm within themselves. In their presence, a man didn't feel controlled, nor did he feel abandoned. He felt held in a safe space where he could take off the heavy armor he wore, a space where he was allowed to show his softness without fear of judgment. Today, we call this presence, a quiet yet powerful energy, not from action, but from state of being. Imagine sitting with him as he says, "I'm not ready for a serious relationship." In your mind, a wave of reactions starts to rise, the urge to argue, to convince, or to withdraw in silence. But this time, you don't do any of that. You simply take a deep breath, smile gently, and say, "I understand." You don't downplay your own desires. You don't try to prove anything. You simply acknowledge the truth as it is. While staying grounded in your own clarity, you know what you want, and you're not ashamed of it. In that moment, the energy in the room shifts. He no longer feels the need to defend himself. He no longer sees you as a threat to his freedom. And in that space, another door opens a door that invites him closer to his own vulnerability. Jung once studied ancient rituals surrounding the union of masculine and feminine energy. In those rites, the woman did not chase to hold on, nor did she retreat to escape. She danced with the masculine energy while remaining firmly rooted in her feminine essence. That was not weakness, it was silent strength. Today, neuroscience shows something similar. When a woman remains calm, not reacting from anxiety or anger, a man's nervous system feels safer. He feels less threatened. And in that safety, he may begin to open up and reveal parts of himself he usually keeps hidden. That's why, sometimes, he seems like a different man. Still the same person, yet suddenly soft, open, and unexpectedly honest. In those rare moments, you touch a part of his soul that he rarely shows anyone. The challenge is that those moments are often fleeting. Not because you did something wrong, but because you haven't yet learned how to stay in that presence long enough. Too often, you get pulled back into old reactions, anxiety, demands, frustration. True power lies in your ability to remain grounded in your feminine presence, no matter how he reacts. It means you're no longer trying to change his words, nor using silence as a weapon. You're simply present quietly, fully like a candle glowing in the dark. The candle does not argue with the darkness. It simply shines. And that light is enough to transform the entire room. I know this may sound abstract, but think of a very real example. Have you ever been near someone whose presence alone made you feel at peace? They didn't need to say much or do anything grand. Their presence was enough. That is the kind of power you are learning to awaken within yourself. When you enter that state, you stop trying to win at the game of love. You stop manipulating. You don't need to act aloof or play hard to get. You simply stand in your truth. And that, ironically, is what draws a man in more than anything else. You might be wondering, so how do I cultivate that presence? The answer isn't in memorizing a list of techniques. It's in returning to yourself, becoming aware of your emotions and breathing through them instead of letting them take over. When anxiety rises, you don't need to text him right away to feel okay. When anger surges, you don't need to lash out with hurtful words. You simply notice it. Ah, this is fear speaking. But fear is not the truth. Feminine presence is not about hiding your emotions. It's about feeling them fully while staying steady inside. And as you begin to practice this, you'll see the dynamic between you and him start to shift. He will sense the difference in your energy. He won't feel cornered. He won't feel abandoned. Instead, he will see a woman standing strong, not depending on whether he stays or leaves. And that changes everything. It makes him curious. It draws him in not because he's pressured, but because he's invited, like a flame that pulls you close. Not because it calls you by name, but because your very nature craves its warmth. There's a famous quote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When two people truly meet in presence, not in fear, not in games, transformation happens. It doesn't require arguing. It doesn't require winning. It happens naturally, in the quiet energy between them. This is the power of feminine presence. You don't need to do much, yet everything changes. If in the previous parts, you saw the spiral within him and the trap within yourself, now you've discovered another path. A path that doesn't begin with clinging or running. It begins with standing firm in who you are. And this presence doesn't just help you reach him. It opens a sacred space where both of you begin to face the shadows that have never been named. Perhaps you've experienced this moment before. In the middle of what seemed like a normal conversation, he suddenly falls silent. Not the cold, distant kind of silence, but a heavy one, as if something unnamed is hanging in the air. You look at him, wanting to ask, wanting to pull him out of that quiet shadow, but you hold back. And in that pause, you realize something important. There are things both of you are avoiding. It's not just his fear of commitment. It's not just your fear of abandonment. It's a shared darkness, floating quietly between you, made of unspoken words, unacknowledged expectations, and long-buried desires. That darkness does not belong to just you, nor to just him. It's something that forms in the space between. And in that space, the relationship becomes vague, full of tension and contradiction. Jung once wrote that when two people meet, it's like a chemical reaction. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. But what many don't realize is, this reaction doesn't only happen in the light of clarity. It also happens in the shadows, in all the things left untouched. In your relationship, this shared darkness is the unresolved tension. It's when he says, "I'm not ready," yet his eyes still search for you at night. It's when you say, "I'm fine," but inside you're overwhelmed with anxiety and longing. Both of you are hiding parts of the truth, and it is this hiding that creates the heavy silence, where the darkness lives. Do you remember the last time he came back after disappearing for a long while? You smiled, pretending everything was normal. But inside, your heart was trembling. How long will he stay this time? Can I really trust him again? You didn't say it, afraid he would walk away. He didn't speak either, afraid the truth might push you away. So both of you stayed silent, keeping secrets, and in doing so, letting the darkness lead. Because what is not brought to light will silently control us. But imagine this just once. Instead of hiding, you allow a small truth to come out, not as a demand, not as a complaint, but as a quiet honesty. When he says, "I'm not ready," you respond, "I understand. And I also have things I long for, even if I'm not asking you to change right away." In that moment, you're not running from the darkness, nor letting it swallow you. You're inviting it to the table like a quiet guest that deserves to be seen. And when that happens, you create a safe space, a space where he too might be honest. Maybe not right away, but slowly, the armor begins to crack. One evening, a woman told me about sitting with the man she loved, a man who always said he couldn't commit. They weren't fighting, they weren't trying to fix anything. She simply looked into his eyes and whispered, "I'm not asking you to promise me anything today. I just want to know what scares you the most." At first, he was silent, avoiding her gaze. Then, after a long pause, he quietly said, "I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm afraid you'll see how weak I really am." That was the first time he admitted his deepest fear. And in that moment, it wasn't because she proved herself or persuaded him. It was because she had the courage to step into the shared darkness, and in doing so, they finally saw each other. The shared darkness can be frightening, but if you're willing to face it, it becomes a place of truth, a space where both can take off their masks. No more chasing and running, no more pretending to be strong or indifferent. Just two humans, face to face, longing to be seen. This is where true transformation begins. But remember, stepping into that space doesn't mean you are responsible for healing him. That's not your job. You're not meant to pull him out of his fear. You're meant to stand firmly in your own truth, so he has the chance to face his own. Your power lies in the ability to speak your truth, while still giving him the freedom to meet his. It's this combination of honesty and non-control that creates a very different kind of magnetism, one that invites, not forces. Maybe you believe that love should always be light, always conflict-free. But the truth is, love grows when both people are brave enough to walk into the dark together. Because light isn't only found in sunny days. It's also found in the quiet night, when two souls light a candle together. In that shared darkness, you don't just see his fear. You also begin to see your own. You recognize that your silence wasn't always calm. It was often fear. You see that your strength sometimes masked a deep longing to be loved. And when this awareness comes, you take your power back from the darkness. You no longer let it control you. You turn it into an ally. And something remarkable happens. He begins to change too. He feels the shift in energy. A truth that carries no judgment, no pressure. That makes him feel safer. And slowly, he begins to reveal more of himself. It's not quick, but step by step, the relationship begins to deepen. You're no longer trapped in the spiral. You become the one holding the light, gently illuminating the path for both of you. This is a turning point. Because the moment you step into the shared darkness, you don't just change the relationship. You change your relationship with love itself. Love is no longer a game of hope and disappointment. It becomes a journey of truth and transformation. But this also leads to a new question. How do you stay in this space? How do you avoid falling back into old reactions and truly stand in your natural magnetism? Because once you touch the shared darkness, everything starts to shift. It's no longer about who leaves first or who cares more. It's about two people standing in their truth. And in that truth, something unexpected happens. You no longer need to chase or hide or prove. You only need to be present, and that presence becomes its own kind of power. Maybe this is the beginning of a new chapter where you finally discover your true strength. the kind that draws him in without him even knowing why. Have you ever noticed that some women don't need to do anything special, yet the whole room seems to revolve around them? It's not because they're loud or because they're trying to draw attention. It's simply that their presence makes others want to lean in, as if there's an invisible force, a magnetic field surrounding them. And the strange thing is that magnetism doesn't come from what they wear or what they say. It comes from within a sense of calm, clarity, and inner steadiness. This is what many call magnetic presence. I want you to imagine a situation. He says to you once again, "I'm not ready for a serious relationship." Normally, those words would tighten your chest. You'd fall into one of the usual reactions, trying to convince him, staying silent and waiting, or pulling away in frustration. But this time, you're different. You take a deep breath, look him in the eye, and say calmly, "I understand. I also know clearly what I want, and I won't give up on that. But I'm not asking you to promise anything right now." What happens in that moment? You're no longer placing your fate in his hands. You're not clinging. You're not rejecting. You're simply standing in your truth, fully and peacefully. And that creates a new kind of energy. You become the center. Instead of being pulled into a spiral, magnetic presence is made of 4 elements. First, you see through the fear in his words. You understand that "I'm not ready" isn't the whole truth. It's a voice of fear inside him. Second, you stay rooted in your desires without shame. Third, you create a safe space where he feels unthreatened, able to be real. And finally, you release the outcome. You're no longer attached to having him at any cost. It might sound like a paradox, letting go, yet becoming magnetic. But that is the paradox of love. When you stop chasing, when you release the need to control the outcome, you become the one he can't take his eyes off. A woman once told me that after years of being stuck in a vague relationship, she decided to try a different approach. When the man repeated his usual line, she smiled and said, "I know, and I still desire a full, committed love. If it's not with you, it will be with someone else." She didn't get angry. She didn't cry. She just spoke the truth. And strangely, instead of walking away, he began to look at her differently. His eyes held something new, a mix of challenge and admiration, because in that moment, he realized she was no longer bound to him, but she hadn't closed her heart either. That is magnetic presence. Neuroscience shows that a man's brain responds strongly to women he sees as a worthy challenge. Not a game-playing challenge, not manipulation, but a woman who holds her ground, a woman who won't lose herself just to please someone else. When you know what you want, when you respect yourself enough not to settle for less than your heart truly desires, you awaken something primal in him, the part that wants to rise, to pursue, to become the kind of man who is worthy of you. But here's the key. You don't force him to change. You stand in your truth. He gets to choose. And if he doesn't choose you, you remain whole. That calm, unshakable energy is the most powerful magnetism of all. Imagine yourself as a mountain. You don't need to move to attract. You simply stand tall and grounded. People may come, people may go, but the mountain remains unmoved. And that very strength is what calls others to climb, to stay, to explore. Just like the mountain, your value isn't dependent on who stays or who leaves. It remains the same. But maybe you're asking yourself, how can I let go of the outcome when I truly want him to stay? The answer is not to pretend you don't care, not to hide your true desires. Letting go of the outcome means this: you can fully acknowledge your longing for real love, and at the same time, accept that if he can't meet you there, you still deserve that love, even if it comes from somewhere else. This isn't indifference. This is clarity. You hold your heart open and your self-worth intact. You don't chase, but you don't shut down either. There's an image I love. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you grip it too tightly, it slips through your fingers. If your hand is too open, the sand falls away. But if you hold it gently, it stays. Love is the same. If you cling, it slips away. If you neglect it, it disappears. But when you hold it with presence, not gripping, not dropping, love has space to remain and grow. Magnetic presence doesn't just change how he sees you, it changes how you see yourself. You no longer feel like the one who must wait, prove, or sacrifice. You begin to realize that you had the power all along, and that power doesn't lie in changing him. It lies in becoming fully yourself. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to change him, he starts to change. Not because you forced it, but because you created a space where change becomes possible. That is the gift of magnetic presence. You reclaim your freedom, and at the same time, you offer freedom to him. You don't hold him through fear, you invite him through wholeness. And if he chooses to stay, it will be real. No more half measures or games. And if he walks away, you lose nothing. Because when you stand in this kind of presence, you've reclaimed the sovereignty of your heart. You're no longer trapped in a spiral. You are free to choose your own path. There's a beautiful paradox in love. When you stop trying to win the game, you've already won. And from this point on, a new question appears. Once you've entered magnetic presence, once you've reclaimed your power, what comes next? The next step is to go deeper. To step into the space where real transformation happens not just in the relationship, but within both of you. Do you remember the early days? Your heart was like a small boat, drifting with every shifting breeze that came from him. When he came close, you raised your sails with hope. When he pulled away, you let go, left floating in the waves of despair. Each cycle made you believe your worth depended on his choices. But now, everything has changed. You've walked through the spiral of his unconscious fears. You've seen the trap of your own reactions. You've dared to face the shared darkness and discovered the power of magnetic presence. And standing where you are now, you realize this truth: the real victory was never about getting him to stay. It was about reclaiming your heart. One morning, you wake up and feel a calm within. Maybe your phone lights up with his name. Maybe it doesn't. But this time, your heartbeat no longer rises and falls with it. You smile because now you know your value is not tied to that message. You've learned how to become the center of yourself. And this doesn't just change your relationship. It changes the way you move through life. You are no longer the woman waiting to be validated. You are the woman who knows she is worthy. And you carry that energy into every relationship, every dream, every decision. True victory is when your happiness no longer depends on an external outcome. When you are no longer guided by the fear of being abandoned, but by the voice within that says, I am worthy of a love that is whole. And the paradox is, the moment you stop needing someone to prove that, the world begins to reflect it back to you. Men look at you differently. They don't just see a lovely woman. They see a whole woman. A woman who doesn't need to be saved. A woman who doesn't need to be completed. A woman who can love deeply without losing herself in love. Jung once said that the process of becoming oneself, individuation, always involves moving through tensions that seem impossible to resolve. You have walked through one of those tensions, loving someone who both longed for you and feared you. And in that very contradiction, you have grown. You now see that love is not a chain, nor is it a competition for control. True love is a space where both people illuminate each other, where both can face their shadows, and both can transform. But to arrive at that kind of love, you first had to come home to yourself. Remember the last time he came back after a long silence? This time, you didn't tremble while waiting. You didn't rush to perform the role of the agreeable woman just to keep him close. You simply looked at him, calm, and let the truth speak for itself. If he said he still wasn't ready, you smiled and said, I understand, and I also know clearly what I want. If it's not you, I believe someone else will walk this path with me. That wasn't meant to hurt him. It wasn't manipulation. It was just the truth. And that truth made him pause, because in that moment, he realized you were no longer playing the old game. If he's brave enough, maybe he'll step towards you not for a half-hearted game, but for a journey of true maturity. But even if he doesn't, you've already won. Because the real victory was never in his choice. It was in yours. You chose to stop chasing. You chose to release the rope that tied your heart to one single outcome. You chose to stand strong, whole, and free. Imagine your life from this point forward. No more long, aching nights waiting for replies. No more days spent trying to decode his silence. Instead, you redirect that energy toward yourself, toward the dreams you once set aside, the quiet joys you once forgot, and the people who truly show up for you. This is freedom. This is victory. And one day, when you least expect it, you may meet another man. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get real. Someone who doesn't flinch when love deepens. Someone mature enough to stand in the dark beside you and help you light it up. But even before that man arrives, you are already whole. Because you found the greatest love of all the love for yourself. Let me leave you with one reminder. A quote I hope you carry with you as the closing note of this journey. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You don't need to become anyone else to be loved. You only need to return to yourself. And in that return, you've already won no matter how things turn out with him. This is the real victory, not in keeping a man, but in becoming a woman who is free, clear, and whole. A woman who knows that love does not come from clinging, but from presence. A woman who doesn't need to convince anyone because her very being is enough. A woman who, when others meet her, they feel it instantly. This is where light lives, where peace resides, where truth is welcome. And if you're still listening, I want you to remember this. You've had this power within you all along. Everything you've been through wasn't meant to turn you into someone else, but to help you remember who you already are. This may be the end, but it is also a beginning of a life where you are no longer pulled into old spirals, no longer trapped in reaction. A life where you stand firm in your magnetic presence and let love arrive gently, freely, and naturally. You have already won, not by holding on to him, but by holding on to yourself. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.